Givaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha
Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Viṣṇu Pad Paramhamsa Purvikacharya Asura Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devam saraswatam vyasam Tato jayam hirdayat Nasta praishu bhadreshu Nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavat uttama shloke Bhaktir bhavati naishtaki Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya So this morning we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, Text 31. And I've been hearing this is a very famous verse. Na te vidu swartagatim hi Viṣṇum durashaya ye bahir artamaninaha anda antandair upaniyamanas te pisa tantryam urudamne badaha nate vidu swarta gatim hi Viṣṇum turashaya ye bahirartamanina andayanandar upaniyamanas te pisa tantryam urudam nibadaha nate vidu swarta gatim hi Viṣṇum turashaya ye bahirartamanina andayantar yayantar dar upaniyamans te pisa tantryam urudam nibadaha nate vidu swarta gatim hi Viṣṇum turashaya ye bahir artamanina andaya tandar upaniyamanas te pisa tantyam urudam nibadaha Anyone else? Okay. Na, not. Te, they. Viduhu, no. So artagatim, the ultimate goal of life, or their own real interest. He, indeed, Viṣṇum, Lord Viṣṇu and his abode. Durashayaha, being ambitious to enjoy this material world. Yea, who, bahi, external sense objects. Artamaninaha, considering as valuable. Andaha, persons who are blind. Yata, just as. Andai, by other blind men. Upaniyamanaha, being led. Te, they. Api, although. Ishatantriyam, to the ropes, laws of material nature. Uru, having very strong. Damne, cords. Badaha, bound. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home, back to Godhead, and engage in the service of Lord Viṣṇu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. Purport. Since there must always be a difference of opinion between demons and devotees, Hiranyakashipu, when criticized by his son Prahlāda Mahārāja, should not have been surprised that Prahlāda Mahārāja differed from his way of life. Nonetheless, Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry and wanted to rebuke his son for deriding his teacher or spiritual master, who had been born in the Brahmana family of the great Acharya, Śukracharya. The word Shuka means semen, and Acharya refers to a teacher or guru. Hereditary gurus or spiritual masters have been accepted everywhere since time immemorial, where Prahlāda Mahārāja declined to accept such a seminal guru or take instruction from him. An actual guru is śrotriya, one who has heard or received perfect knowledge through paramparā, the disciplic succession. Therefore, Prahlāda Mahārāja did not recognize a seminal spiritual master. Such spiritual masters are not at all interested in Viṣṇu. Indeed, they are hopeful of material success. Bahir artha maninaha. The word bahi means external, artha means interest, and manina means taking very seriously. Generally speaking, practically everyone is unaware of the spiritual world. The knowledge of the materialist is restricted within the 4 billion mile limit of this material world, which is in the dark portion of the universe. They do not know that beyond the material world is the spiritual world. Unless one is a devotee of the Lord, one cannot understand the existence of the spiritual world. Gurus, teachers, who are simply interested in this material world are described in this verse as andha, blind. Such blind men may lead many other blind followers without true knowledge of material conditions. but they are not accepted by devotees like Prahlāda Mahārāja. Such blind teachers, being interested in the external material world, are always bound by the strong ropes of material nature. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vrishakan Vitamsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hare Vancha Kalpatri Vyascha Kripasandibhi Evacha Patitanam Pavinibhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna and good morning. So it says there's a difference of opinion between demons and devotees. This Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, or Hari Katha, Krishna Katha, who is this meant for? The devotees. And topics concerning Krishna are relishable only for the devotees, not for the non-devotees. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, what is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening is night for the introspective sage. So the devotees, they cannot be understood by the materialistic people. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that the Srimad Bhagavatam has value among the devotees. But for others, let's say those that have gotten books, they see the Sanskrit. They say, what is this? And then they think it's just a scrap of paper. But for the devotees, when we see the newspaper, we say the same thing, right? What is this? So we don't care for what the newspaper has to say. Everything is all there. Bad news. Birth, old age, disease, and death. At Balboa Park, there's an elderly gentleman, and he always walks by my table. And you know what he has in his arm? A newspaper. And I told him one time, excuse me, sir, when you're done reading the newspaper, tell me if there's any good news. He said, okay. So I saw him again, and I said, is there any good news in the newspaper? He said, yeah. So, and he mentioned some soccer team made it to the finals. That was he considered that to be the good news, and everything else was just miseries. And so, birth, disease, old age, and disease, and the threefold miseries of this material world, everyone is being bound by them. Even when people say, I'm living a good life, but the question is, how long will that last? Srila Prabhupada explains that anything created in this material world has a beginning and an end. So if our happiness is based on something created, then it has to have an end. Srila Prabhupada, he tells this wonderful story. There was a Christian priest, and he wanted to preach the Christian philosophy to the people in England. So the workers there, he told them, Lord Jesus Christ will save you. If you don't take shelter of Jesus Christ, you will go to hell. So the workers, they said, who is Jesus Christ? What is his number? Because, laborers, they have a number, right? A badge number, so on. So the priest said, no, Jesus Christ, he's the Son of God. He's not a worker. He doesn't have a number. And then they asked, what is hell? So the priest, he said, hell is very cold and it's very damp. So the workers, they remained silent. So these workers, they worked at a mine, So they said, what's the difference between hell and this, And then so the Christian preacher, he he said, "Oh, there's no newspaper." And then the mine workers, they said, "Oh, horrible." So then they wanted to understand who Jesus Christ is. So when I read this, I just couldn't stop laughing, you know. Everybody loves the newspapers. And I did a search. It says that in 2022, an estimated total U.S. daily newspaper circulation, print and digital combined, was 20.9 million for both weekly and Sundays. That's a lot of trees cut down. But where does the newspaper end up the next day? In the trash. We were having a reading in the front ashram, and this devotee, he mentioned how, you know, sometimes when we give books, they throw it in the trash. So Vijay narrated the story of Srila Prabhupada. He said, the devotee said, "Oh, Prabhupada, you know, they're throwing our books in the trash." Srila Prabhupada said, "Why are you surprised? They're throwing their babies in the trash." You know, he said, "This is Kali Yuga, so don't be surprised." So this age of Kali is a very degrading age, actually. And Srila Prabhupada describes that everything decreases. Our lifespan, our memory, even mercy, it decreases throughout time. And I remember I was a little what's it called? A young lad. There was a bully in our apartments, you know. He would bully the smaller kids. And I was thinking, you know, let me stand up to this guy. He was bigger than me, you know. So nonetheless, I wanted to do something. So I stood up to him, you know, and we started fighting. And then after the fight, he actually respected me because he knew that I was trying to protect the other kids. So mercy, it's decreasing now. When people see others suffering, they just walk past them. Like at Balboa Park, there's so many unfortunate homeless people there. And people want to do good. They want to give this person maybe some money. They want to give them some food, but most of them, they just walk past them. They ignore them. And you can see how, you can say, difficult it is for the devotees, you know, to see someone suffering and the people just walk past them. But we try to, and we bring sweets, you know, we bring prasadam to these people. Dvijamani Prabhu, he took a picture of me giving a box of prasadam to one of these homeless men. And the guy, he was very thankful, you know, that this is not just, you know, whatever they have in the stores, but something brought from the temple. And so demons and devotees, our activities are different. Sometimes people ask me, what is it like to be a monk? And I explain we wake up at 4:30. At that point, I already lost them. Yeah. Huh? No, I'm saying we have to be at the temple room by 4:30. And I tell them because we want to wake up, we want to meet Krishna, we want to see him. And then they can't understand this. And they think 4:30, that's too early, you know. And I tell them, what time do you wake up? They say 9 o'clock. We're already having breakfast, you know. We already did so many activities. We went to Mangal Arati, we were chanting, we finished our rounds, we did Tulsi Puja, we did so many activities. But for them, they just wake up 9 o'clock, and that's the start of their day. And what is the first thing that they get? Coffee. You know, that's the start of their day. But for us, we're already engaged in our services. You know, book distribution, deity worship, Sankirtan, cooking, grocery shopping. You know. All of our activities are glorious. They're not mundane or material. Even pot washing, you know. I remember I came to the temple, and one of the brahmacharis, it was his day to clean the pots. I said, "Prabhu, let me help you." He said, "No." And it was like a stack of pots, like it was bigger than the sink. So he said something that stuck with me. He said, "I need all the purification I need." And I was thinking, wow, that's a devotee, you know. So he's not looking at these activities as mundane, but they're actually direct service to Krishna. And when the pots are washed, the cooks, they have something clean to cook with. They have some nice container to put prasadam with. So our activities are different from, Srila Prabhupada calls them demons, non-devotees. So I explained to people that we wake up 4:30 in the morning, we have class, and we study these books. And I tell them Bhagavad Gita is a very ancient book of knowledge. And then I ask them, can you guess how old it is? And they would say, they would consider 200 years to be old. But I tell them it's much older than that. And so I have them keep guessing. When they get to 3,000, I tell them higher. And then that's when their eyes widen. I tell them that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago, but it's actually more ancient because the knowledge is already there. And Srila Prabhupada, he would always explain when Arjuna, when he asked Krishna, how am I to understand that you spoke this knowledge to the sun god? By birth, the sun god is so senior to us. And then Krishna tells Arjuna that you and I have had many, many births. I can remember them, but you cannot. And Srila Prabhupada explains this is the difference between the conditioned living entity and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna knows past, present, future. He knows everything. But for us, we don't know what we did a month ago. We don't even know what we had, what type of prasadam we had two weeks ago. And then you hear Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about gurus, these people that lead the blind. And you hear that a lot, I'm a guru, I consider myself to be guru. But the question is, what is your qualification? And it was brought up the other time. They asked, I think it was, what is his name? George Harrison or John Lennon and Yoko Ono. I said, how do you know who's a bona fide teacher? And said, someone who's addicted to Krishna. So when a person speaks, is it benefiting the person hearing and anyone else who is inquiring? The sages of Naimisharanya, they praised the questions asked by, who was it? Parikshit Maharaj, They were glorifying that your question is so beneficial for humankind. Everyone will be able to understand the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And not just some mundane knowledge, but transcendental knowledge. I had a grandfather, and he was blind. So I would hold his hand, And then he would always ask me, when there's a step, please let me know. So you can see how dangerous it is to follow a blind person. They take us to a very dangerous situation. And so the leaders of today, they're leading the innocent people to a very dark place. And I remember I was asking this question to people that walked by. I said, would you follow a blind person? It's common sense, but they said no. So I said, ask their leaders, who am I and what is the goal of life? And they can't tell you. But these are the people that we're accepting as leaders in society. And Prabhupada, he would say they don't know their real self-interest because they don't know who they are. I love to ask this question to people, who are you? And people would tell me everything about themselves except the soul. I asked someone yesterday, I said, who are you? She said, I'm a kind person, I said, have you ever gotten angry? She said, yeah. So I said, well, sometimes you're not a nice person, So sometimes you have to play around with them like that. So ultimately, I was explaining to them that the Bhagavad Gita explains who you are, your spiritual identity, and that we actually have a higher purpose in this life, not just accumulating wealth, trying to make our business successful. We're not trying to be presidents, but to understand self-realization that I'm this eternal soul within this body. And my duty as a soul is different from that of the body. The body's goal is to satisfy the senses. Eat something nice, listen to good music. My spiritual master, he would say, titillate the senses. So people don't know their self-interest. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So the devotees, we should also set a good example. You know, if we're unclean, if we're using bad words, if we're talking a lot of too much prajalpa, and then what is our value in Krishna consciousness? I remember we were having Harinam at Balboa Park, and I was talking to another devotee, and then this devotee, he said, "Oh, Prabhu, maybe you shouldn't, you know, talk about that to this new devotee." And then he checked me, you know. And I was thinking, that's true. You know, when we speak, what are we talking about? Are we talking about Krishna consciousness? Or are we talking about material consciousness? So Srila Prabhupada, he says that people in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. I heard this story that there was a Mataji, and she asked this sadhu to please tell my son to stop eating sweets. So I told him, come back a week later, you know, come back next week. So the woman, she came back and she asked the sadhu, why did you tell me to come back a week later? And then he said, because at that time I myself was taking sweets, you know. So we should set example for others and also for the other devotees, you know, to wake up early to come to Mangal Arati on time. I know I'm not a good example of that, but we should strive for it. And so, and also someone who's not connected to the bona fide sampradayas, we cannot accept them as a guru. Srila Prabhupada would always ask, who is their teacher? And then who is their teacher? Where is this knowledge coming from? So there's 4 bona fide sampradayas: the Brahma Sampradaya, the Shri Sampradaya, the 4 Kumaras, and the Rudra Sampradaya. So anyone who's not connected in this paramparā system, we can't accept them as a guru, no matter how learned they are materially. And so yeah, those that are too materially conscious, they cannot understand that the goal of life is to go back home, to return back to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, he says that formerly in the Satya Yuga, people were living for 100,000 years. And then the next Yuga, Treta Yuga, people were living for 10,000 years. And then Dwapara Yuga, they live for 1,000 years. And then Kali Yuga, if we're lucky, we live to be 100. And then Srila Prabhupada, he describes that in the Bhagavatam. It says that if a person lives for 20 to 30 years, he will be considered as a grand old man. Imagine that, 20, 30 years old, you're considered to be very old. So Kali Yuga will be very degraded. And you can see that practically, you know. Children, kids, middle school, they're indulging in sexual activities. You know. So we should try to leave this material world and at the same time bring as many people as we can with us. And in the purport, it describes that this material world, people don't know the extension of it. And Srila Prabhupada, he would say that this material world is only 1/4 of Krishna's creation. The 3/4 are in the spiritual sky. So that's a lot of living entities, you know. But those that are here in this material world, we're chewing the chewed, like the previous verse, you know. Prabhupada, he would say, sugar cane. I think a few weeks ago, Dvija Mani and myself, we were on this hunt for sugar cane. We went to all the Indian stores, they didn't have it. So sugar cane, those that have, you know, had it, what you do is you keep biting it and chewing it till there's no sweetness, there's no liquid in it, and you just spit it out. Imagine picking something that's already been chewed and you put it in your mouth and you chew it again. You know, there's people here in Kali Yuga, that's what they're doing. So we should have compassion for them. We should give them a fresh sugar cane. You know. So tell them, you know, stop chewing what's already been chewed. Mm-hmm. Transcendental sugar cane. When I was in Mayapur, I haven't had sugar cane juice in so long. So this other brahmachari, Namabai, Abhay Namprabhu, he said, hey, let's go get some sugar cane. And there was a person there, And within like the first week, I can't tell you how many cups of sugar cane. Not only were they cheap, according to American standards, but they were really sweet. And I was trying to ask the person if I can just buy the sugar cane itself. He said no. That's okay. So chewing the chewed, people in this world, they're doing that over and over and over. And they're expecting to taste some sweetness here. But you can't, because this world is temporary, it's full of misery. And our philosophy is to be satisfied with whatever God has given us. Don't try to encroach upon others' property. And Srila Prabhupada, he describes this as dog philosophy. There was a dog, he was about to cross this river, and he had something in his mouth. And then when he saw the reflection, he thought it was another dog, and he wanted to take something that the dog had. So as soon as he opened his mouth, he dropped the foodstuff and he lost it. He lost everything. So similarly, we shouldn't take what's ours. We should be satisfied. We should be grateful what we have, what Krishna has given us temporarily. Not only that, but we should use it for Krishna's service. So lastly, it talks about ropes, cords. So there's the ropes of material nature that are always binding us. And then the other rope I was thinking of is the rope from the Damodar Leela. We glorify this rope when we read the Damodar Ashtakam. It glorifies this rope, that's binding Krishna's belly. So we have two choices: to be bound up by material nature, or to be bound up by Krishna's love, Srila Prabhupada's love. And I just heard this today. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he was giving this class, and he said that the devotees, they were distributing these sweets, They're called Simply Wonderfuls. And then Prabhupada said, yeah, the philosophy is simply wonderful. The prasadam is simply wonderful, Krishna consciousness is simply wonderful. The process is simply wonderful. And then someone said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, it's because you're simply wonderful. So the devotees, they were glorifying Srila Prabhupada. And also in the Leela Amrita, you can understand the struggles that Srila Prabhupada went through for us. I always think about this, And when he asked his god brothers, please come and help, send some brahmacharis, send some help, they didn't even reply to him. They didn't even bother with him. They're too busy with their own temples, So we should keep this in mind, and we should reflect that to be a devotee, it's not an ordinary thing. And like we heard in the morning, Krishna can award liberation, but he doesn't award devotional service just to anyone. So, Well, it takes the sincerity and it takes mercy of Guru and Srila Prabhupada and the devotees. Okay. So Krishna is not, he can't be controlled by how much money we give to him, but he's controlled by our love, ajita, conquered by the devotees' love. Okay, that's all I have. Are there any questions, comments? Yes, true. Okay. So I met a nice couple a few days ago, and one of the ways they told me that I can remember names, their names rhymed. The boy's name was Chase, and then the girl's name was Grace. Chase and Grace. But they were amazing souls, They came to my table, I didn't have to call them. And they were saying, we are on this spiritual path, and it's not a coincidence that you're here. So I explained the books to them and what Krishna consciousness is. So maybe an hour later, they come back. And then the boy, he starts asking wonderful questions, What is the goal of life? And then he asked me, earlier you asked me, who am I? Maybe you can answer that. So I was telling him that within this body is the eternal soul. And the soul actually has a spiritual purpose. It's not to enjoy this temporary material world, but it's to reawaken our dormant love for Krishna. And then the Mataji, she was, raised as a Christian. So she said, who's Krishna? Not in a challenging way, but I said, well, the name Christ comes from the Greek name Krista, but it's a mispronunciation of the name Krishna. She said, wow. So I gave her the Science of Self-Realization. I told her it's actually a book. It says, Understanding Christ and Krishna. And then she said, can I have that book? And I said, it's already included in that set. And she was very surprised. So I was speaking to them for like maybe a good 20, 30 minutes. These are the people that I wanted to spend time with. And then they live in Minnesota. So I gave them my contact number, and I said, if you have any more questions, please let me know. And then the boy, he said, I have so many questions, So long story short, they took books. They were very respectful. Not only that, but they were curious about the philosophy. And then the boy, he said, I've never heard this philosophy before, that we are part and parcel of Krishna, of God. And to render service to him is what makes the part happy. And then yesterday, so apparently when I went to Hawaii, I met some gentleman. His name was Zach. And yesterday I met him face to face again. He said he had a long beard, And I said, you probably can't recognize me. But he said, when I saw you, I understood who you were, like that. So he brought two of his friends, and their friends, they weren't so interested in getting books, but somehow or other, Bhakti Zach, he convinced them to get a book. He said, and he was glorifying me, but I was a little embarrassed, And I said, I'm just simply repeating what I've heard and read from these books. And so Bhakti Zach, anyway, I wanted to give him a hug, So we gave each other like a big bear hug, like someone that you haven't seen in a while. And he said that he remembered me 2 years ago when Maharaj and I went to Hawaii. And I would like to read this nice text that he sent me. He said, Hi Govardhan, I hope this message finds you in good spirits. It's been quite a while since we last communicated, and I often think back to our meeting in Hawaii. The connection we made, although brief, left a lasting impression on me. I wanted to reach out and see how you've been. Your journey as a young monk and the dedication you showed were truly inspiring. I find myself reflecting on our conversation and the peaceful atmosphere at the temple. So when you speak to people, you want to leave this nice impression on them. And then also, I met a nice family yesterday. Yes.
Got to give the addendum to your for how you started the story, because I had names that were similar. So when Dr. Glenn started coming to the temple, then his brother came, his twin brother, who's named Dennis. So after some time, I said, "Well, that's interesting," and I just out of the from out of the sky, I said, "Is your name really Glennis? Did your mother give you Glennis and Dennis? Does that rhyme?" Who would ever think of that? And the answer was?
Yes.
That's his name, Glennis. The original name was Glennis.
Thank you, Dravid. When I was working, our names would be posted on this bulletin board. And I was working with this other person for like, I don't know, months or even maybe a year or so. And finally he said, "Who's Glennis? I always see his name." And I said, "That's me," and he was like, "Your name's Glennis?" And I said, because, everyone knew me by Glenn. So, yeah, Bhakti Zach, it was nice to be able to put a face on this name, because, you meet so many people in Sankirtan. You meet so many people when you travel. But it was nice that I finally got to, you can say, meet this nice devotee. And he was explaining to his friends that, this monk here, he's still doing what he loves, which is book distribution. And then so the man, his friend, got a set. And then he said, is it okay if I give you a donation? We didn't even ask for a donation. And then he said, you know, I didn't read for a long time. I think today's a good day to start, you know. So that's all. Are there any, I mean, there's more stories, but I don't want to keep you guys from. Okay. Okay. So, let me see. I wrote down a few notes. There was this man walking, and I said, excuse me, sir, does your dog like to read? You know, and he started laughing. He said, maybe. He said, this might have been my dad in his previous life. He said, my dad loves to read, you know. So I said, have you thought about karma and reincarnation? He said, I always think about it. And then he said, I always meet people that reminds me of someone that I once knew before they left their body. So I said, give me 1 minute of your time. He came to the table. So I said, what's your dog's name? And he named his dog the name of his father. See how attached people are? You know? So I said, imagine having a human body, and then your next birth you take the body of a dog, and that sobered him up right away. I said, instead of being free to do whatever you want, whatever you would like, you have this leash on you. And if you need to pass water or stool, you need to wait for your master to come back. So I told him that taking birth again is such a dangerous situation. And I told him, you look like a very smart and intelligent person. Looks like you came from a good family. But in your next birth, you may not have the same situation. So I gave him a coming back because he was explaining how he didn't like to read. But I said, this book will change your life. So he said, you know, let me do a test. He opened up a random, you know, people do that on book distribution. They open up a random page, and if they read a sentence that relates to their current situation, current life, then they'll get a book. And so he was mentioning how people can remember their, you know, addresses, their parents' names, their previous birth. And then he said, you know, I went to one of these past life regressions classes. And then he said, I'm going to get this book, like that. And then I was joking around, and I said, what about your dad? You know? And then he said, maybe in his next birth, you know. So I said, these books actually liberate the soul from this bondage of karma, samsara, the cycle of birth and death. And then he said, what other books do you have? So I gave him another stack. I said, give one to a friend, you know, maybe someone who's getting into meditation or someone who's getting into a reading. So he gave me a nice donation, and then he also took a set, and then I gave him a bag and said, you know, I always see you around, but I never spoke to you. But he said, when you mentioned my dog, I was immediately, so he took the books, and then he was telling his dog, look, we're going to read this together. So as I was watching them, I was thinking, you know, how fortunate are we to understand the value of human life. Yeah. And then so one more short story. There was a lady yesterday, and like most people, they weren't interested. So, you know, she said, no, thank you. And then she came back, and she said, I like that question that you asked me. And I said, what question was that? And she said, you asked me, how is my quest for the meaning of life? And she said, you know, I always think about that. So she said, what books do you have? And I gave her The Journey of Self-Discovery. I said, I think you'll really appreciate this book. And I turned to the back and I said, it answers these 3 very important questions. Who am I? And I told him this question is the foundation of knowledge. If we don't know who we are, how can we move forward? So I asked her, who are you? And she just drew a blank. She said, I don't know who I am. So I said, you definitely need to get this book. And so I started using this new line. I said, do you like music? They say, yeah. I said, do you like food? And by this time, they're already smiling. And I said, do you like to be happy? And she said, of course, you know, all yes to these questions. So I gave them the stack of books, you know, As China and Be Happy, Higher Taste, Beyond Birth and Death, Easy Journey to Other Planets, and The Perfection of Yoga. I said, I think you'll really like these books too. And then she said, can I take 2 more for my friends? I said, you can take as many as you want. So she said, how much do you want for these books? And I said, we just humbly asked for a donation. And she reached into her wallet and she gave $50. And I was thanking her for coming back and allowing me to take some of her time. And she was so, after that conversation, she started thanking me for what we do at the park. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reaching out to people. And I told her nothing happens by chance. And I told her that question I've been asking everybody. And she said, that's a very good question. Okay. Yes?
Simply wonderful lecture. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the small books and how each of them have brought devotees here to Krishna consciousness? I think this is a great story.
So when I introduce the books, I tell them that one book can change your life. And then I point to the back, which is the perfection of yoga. So that's Balaram's first book. And then Kanai Balai, his first book was Easy Journey to Other Planets. And then for Francisco, his was Beyond Birth and Death. And Chris O, you guys remember Chris O? His first book was Higher Taste. And for Joseph's book was Chant and Be Happy. And then my book was Science of Self-Realization. So all of these books, they do make devotees, they change lives, Even the simple books, the smaller books. So that's why I like to push these sets, because when they see the material, it's not so much daunting, and it's not so much, for them to, because sometimes people tell me they don't have a lot of time to read. So these small books, they make devotees. Yes, Rudolph.
Because I'm thinking it from the side of book production and so, and this in the 90s Sura was always getting on my case, so to speak, to produce more books, new ones, because Prabhupada wrote a letter and he said you can make books out of my lectures, which is what Science of Self-Realization is basically, and all those little books are from Prabhupada's lectures. So I said, okay. So we took a bunch of selections from the Back to Godhead magazine, And it was basically a sequel to Science of Self-Realization. The same kind of thing, we had different topics, and we had Drew DeCarmer did a lot of the selection. But then came the time for figure out the title of the book. And somehow I thought of that title, Science, the Journey of Self-Discovery. Later on, I found there was another book by that name. And I was worried that, oh my God, we're going to get copyright for it. On Amazon, but nothing happened. And so it's very interesting to me, because we had other books that we had this thing called Quest for Enlightenment, and Dharma, the Way of Transcendence. They're all the same, similar type of things. But the one that has stayed since the early 90s is this Journey of Self-Discovery, and I think it's the title. I think it's the title is intriguing to people. So I'm just happy that at least one of those books is still that I've worked on and produced is still being distributed widely. And I know in India the Dharma book is, because that's a meaningful title to them. That's not exactly the same format, but that's like teachings of Kapila Dev, teachings of Queen Kunti from Prabhupada's lectures, and then you take excerpts from his talks. You have the regular purport and the excerpts, and so that's another one. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. That gave me an idea. I'm very, I don't do well with Indians, no matter what I tell them, this book is not for you, you can give it to someone, give a small donation to the temple. Oh, we already give, So that Dharma book, I'm going to look for it in the book shed, and then I think that's something that they might take. Yeah.
But in India, I noticed there's a softback. They produce their own softback, and we used to have it on the shelf there. So I think they distribute it there. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your time and attention. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.